we're going to answer the question, how to make a port sauce. This would also answer the question of how to make a Madeira sauce. Ports and Madeira, two wines, slightly sweet, some drier than others, carry and hold a unique position in the sauce making world. And let me just go over that a little bit with you first so you understand what qualifies these as being unique within the sauce making world. First, port wine or Madeira doesn't necessarily have to be reduced separately prior to having sauce added to it. Okay? In this particular case, the port wine sauce that we're going to make, we're going to cook a little bit of mirepoix, celery, carrots, and onions with some thyme, a little bit of garlic. We're going to pour some port on it, reduce it a little bit. Then we're going to pour some more on and add some brown sauce to it immediately, where we'll actually be adding brown sauce to some unreduced port wine, and some reduced in this case. And you could do it completely unreduced if you wanted to, or completely reduced. I recommend the combination that I'm doing because you want to get a little bit of concentration on the reducing part of the port coupled with the fresh flavor quality of unreduced port wine directly into the sauce. And sometimes after the sauce is all done, you throw a couple ounces of fresh port right in it to give it that more fresh port robust flavor. Now that is what's unique about port and Madeira in the sauce making world. It doesn't absolutely have to be reduced separately. You see, in the case of the dry red wine sauce or the dry white wine sauce, if you don't reduce either of those wines prior to adding white stock or brown sauce or whatever it is you're making, adding to it, they will taste winey when you're done. But the ports and the Madeiras do not, and that's what's unique about them in the sauce making world. Now, we're going to take a saucepan, and we're going to put a little bit of flame on it, and we're going to put a little bit of butter inside the saucepan. Just enough to saute a little bit of the mirepoix. We have a small to medium diced mirepoix here. I'm going to put a couple of cups of that in there. And we're going to put a little bit of pepper in there. And we're going to put a little bit of dried leaf thyme, or you can use fresh thyme if you want. And we're going to brown that a little bit, and then we're going to add some port to that. So we're going to time elapse this for about 5 minutes while we brown this. And we'll be back in 5 minutes right now. The vegetables are slightly brown. It's about 75% cooked. The mirepoix that we're going to use in the port wine sauce. Now, here we go. Now we're going to take, and the rule of thumb here, just very much like the dry red and dry white wine rule in terms of how much wine proportionately one uses relative to the amount of sauce that one is making. The answer is, if you want 2 cups of sauce, then you use 2 cups of port wine, okay? If you want 2 cups of red wine sauce, you start out with 2 cups of red wine to begin reducing it, okay? So I have a couple of cups of port wine here, so we're going to splash a little bit on here. And we're going to let that reduce for about 5 minutes. We're going to come right back. We're going to time elapse that. And then we're going to add the rest of the port and 2 cups of brown sauce. And we're going to let that simmer for about 20 minutes, 30 minutes. We're going to strain it. We're going to have ourselves a nice port wine sauce when we're done. Port wine sauce is basically simple, but it's predicated on the fact that you have brown sauce. Now keep in mind that making the brown sauce or the brown stock, which takes time when you make it from the bones in accordance with the brown beef or veal stock and sauce recipe that's in this library of DVDs, there is an alternate method that you can use, but there is some sacrifices associated with it. And that is you can use canned beef stock that you buy in a supermarket in a pinch, or if you're in a hurry, to make the brown sauce out of. I don't recommend it, but if you have to do it, you can do it. I don't do it. I certainly don't do it in these classes and throughout any of these lessons, but once, I had to do it once at a place where I got stuck and we didn't have the brown stock. Something happened to it. It got burnt, and we had to run out and buy some in a can. We used it, but that's when I would recommend you use it. On the other hand, some of you might be very comfortable using that on a regular basis to some extent. And then making your own homemade stock for the exception, like on the holidays or for something extra special that you want to do. Meanwhile, we're going to go back to port sauce. That's just why I touch on that whole business about the brown sauce, because this is the primary ingredient for the port wine sauce. One isn't going to spend 3 days or 2.5 days making port wine sauce. You either have brown sauce in your freezer and you pull it out and you make some port sauce with it, or you don't make the port sauce. You're not going to make brown sauce just to make port sauce. That's very unlikely. You should make brown sauce and keep it in small portions in your freezer and take it out for whatever use you want it to be. In this case, this use would be the port wine sauce one day, because you want to make some roast pork or something like that to have the port wine sauce with, or some duck or chicken or something. So it doesn't look like we're going to have to time-elapse this, because I've talked almost for the full 5 minutes that I told you we were going to time-elapse this. So now I'm going to add the brown sauce to the reduced wine and mirepoix, which is what you see here. That's reduced about 50% just in the last 4 or 5 minutes. We didn't use that much, that's why. Now we're going to crank it up a little bit, and we're going to add the rest of the port. Excuse me. Now keep in mind that port means wine from Portugal also. Technically there's no such thing as port from California. Just like there's no such thing as champagne from California. And there's no such thing as Roquefort cheese from Sweden. It must come from Roquefort, France, and so on and so on. You can't have Parma ham unless it comes from Parma, Italy, or Parmesan cheese unless it comes from Parma, Italy. So port wine comes from Portugal, simple as that. Now, we're going to add the brown sauce to this. There's a couple of cups, and we're going to let that simmer. Now we're going to time-elapse this. We're going to let that simmer for about 20 minutes, half an hour. I may add a little more port to it during, and if I do, I'll let you know. Meanwhile, we'll be back in about 20 minutes after that's had time to simmer and come to the right texture and consistency that we're looking for. So we'll be back in 20 minutes right now.